Communication plays a vital role in our day-to-day life. It helps us understand the people around us and vice versa. But, do you ever imagine how the world would look like without the proper way of communicating? Do you know that there are strategies that we could use to successfully transfer our ideas? If you want to know all these things, sit down and buckle up as we listen for today's lesson. Welcome to Radyo Eskwela sa Isabella's English Academy. Hello dear grade 7 learners! It's really official. We are now on the 4th quarter of this school year. It's such a fantastic time of being with you through Radyo Eskwela sa Isabela. I know you have gained learnings and realizations from the number of months that we are together. And today, we are blessed to have another episode of useful and practical learning only here in English Academy. I am Teacher Terence, always on the go, your teacher through radio. To start our discussion today, you will watch and listen to a conversation. The conversation revolves around the following characters. We have Fina, Rochelle, Gab, and Mr. Arellano. Let's find out what will happen while they discuss among each other if what food deserves to be the national dish in the Philippines. Fina says it's lechon. Rochelle claims it's adobo, while Gab says it's sinigang. While watching, observe how the characters communicate their agreement and disagreement with each other. Are you ready?
Yes, we are.
Here is the conversation. And I'm back, dear learners. Did you watch and listen well to the conversation?
Yes, sir.
That's great. Going back to my question earlier, how did the characters express their agreement and disagreement among each other? Did you just say that Rochelle raised an eyebrow to Fina? Correct. That's actually a way to show disagreement. What about when Fina crossed arms to Rochelle? You're right too. It's also a way of disagreeing to someone.
All right.
What about the words that they said to show agreement? That's a sharp memory, learners. Gab said, "You're right," to Rochelle, and Rochelle said to Fina, "Yes, lechon baboy is the star of celebrations." What the characters said and did are examples of verbal and non-verbal communication. Have you heard about these two terms before? If not, don't worry because we will learn about them today. Now learners, I have a question for you. What is communication? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this word? I bet you think of someone who is talking to another person. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
I knew it. That's actually the first concept that people think when they hear the word communication. Specifically, that refers to interpersonal communication. Automatically, we connect communication to speaking. However, communication is not limited to speaking alone. Communication is a complex process that includes variety of ways and forms. In definition, communication is the sum of all the things that a person does while interacting with others. It involves a continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. While communicating, people share ideas and exchange their feelings and thoughts. Can you still follow? Let us continue. Interpersonal communication is the process of exchange of information, ideas, and feelings between two or more people through verbal or non-verbal methods. It often includes face-to-face exchange of information in a form of voice, facial expressions, body language, and gestures. One question, learners. What is the difference between verbal and non-verbal communication? Are you ready to know more about them? Let's listen very well then. Let's start with verbal communication. Verbal communication refers to the use of words for communication purposes. This is the more obvious form of communication because it explicitly tells what a person wants to convey.
Verbal communication has two forms. These are oral and written communication. When we say oral communication, this includes all types of communication that use speaking. Hence, this communication needs a sense of hearing to understand it.
These are face-to-face talks, telephone conversations, video conferences, Zoom meetings, and the like. On the other hand, written communication needs the sense of sight to get the meaning. This includes letters, signages, posters, and anything that uses printed text to communicate. Will you clap your hands if you understood the differences between the two? That's great! Let's continue with our discussion. Verbal communication is easy to understand, especially when there are no communication barriers such as the language used, noise, affective filters, and other physical barriers. Verbal communication is everywhere. We hear it from the people around us, from TV, radio, and other devices. When somebody says, "Good morning," to you, that's verbal communication. When somebody sends you a text message through your phone, that's verbal communication. But, did you know that verbal communication is only 7% of our total communication? According to a study by Dr. Albert Merabian, 93% of our communication is non-verbal in nature. Amazing, right? Now, let's talk about non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication typically refers to hand and body movements, gestures, facial expressions, physical appearances, artifacts, space, and others. In other words, nonverbal communication refers to the behavioral aspect of communication, both intentional and unintentional. Hence, nonverbal communication is also regarded as communication without words. It is so powerful that it reveals a lot about our message as communicators. When someone frowns about what we say, that may mean that he or she disagrees with our statement. Or when someone claps his or her hand while listening to us, that may mean that he or she is amazed of our statement. Generally, there are 6 types of nonverbal communication. These are facial expressions, gestures, proximity, touch, eye contact, and appearance. I have an easier way to remember them. Will you say Fajepti? Very good. Fajepti as in F, A, G, E, P, T, E, and A. Say it again. Fajepti. Fa stands for facial expressions, G for gestures, P for proximity, T for touch, E for eye contact, and A for appearance. It's easy, right? Now, let's learn about them one by one. Let's start with facial expression. Facial expression is a type of nonverbal communication that helps us convey our message. A communicator may look happy, sad, angry, or excited while speaking or listening. This way, the message conveyed will be more understood. For example, when somebody says directly, "I am happy about that," but his or her face seems to be not, this clearly tells us that the listener should be careful in filtering the message. Now, let's have the second type of nonverbal communication, which is gesture. When we speak, gesture can make our message stronger or weaker. When somebody points out something while speaking to clarify what he or she means is an example of how gesture contributes to communication. This time, let's have proximity. Proximity is how close are we to our listener or audience. When we are too close to the one we are communicating, this may intimidate them or may make them feel small. On the other hand, when we are too far from our audience, this may lead to confusion or not clear communication. So, remember to always have an enough distance when communicating to someone. Are you still following? I can see your patience. Let's now have the fourth type of nonverbal communication, which is touch. Shaking an audience hand or putting hand on someone's shoulder are examples of nonverbal cues that can affect meaning, simply because touch communicates meaning. That's pretty simple, right? The fifth type of nonverbal communication is eye contact. Making and maintaining eye contact to someone when verbally communicating or when listening show that there is interest going on. Having a good eye contact conveys honesty, sincerity, or even power when communicating. Now, let's have the sixth type of nonverbal communication, which is appearance. Appearance pertains to our clothing, hair, or anything that tells how we look. During formal events, you should wear formal dress. You should also wear a good-looking watch or jewelry. All these add to nonverbal communication. Were you able to get the sixth type of nonverbal communication?
Yes, sir.
That's awesome! Will you say what's the meaning of Fajepti again? Wow, that's impressive. It means facial expression, gesture, proximity, touch, eye contact, and appearance. Now learners, let's test your understanding of today's lesson through a short quiz. I think you are now ready for it. Well then, bring out your pen and paper for our quiz. You will listen to different situations and then determine the appropriate feedback or strategy that you will do from the given choices. Write the letter of the best answer on your answer sheets. Are you now ready?
This is the first situation. During the first day of school, Nena was nominated by her classmate as class president. But Nena is not interested about it. What should Nena do? Is it A, look at her classmate in a frowning face? Or B, raise her hands and say, "I object," politely? C, stand and just say, "I am not interested." Let's have number 2. Jerry is applying for a work. He is called for an interview. What is the best thing Jerry should say or do? Is it A, Jerry should wear a formal attire and speak fluently? Or B, Jerry should wear comfortable attire and use casual language? Or C, Jerry should shake hands with the boss immediately upon meeting? Let's proceed to number 3. Your friend has a big problem about their family. You come to him and give advice. What should you say and do? Is it A, have a 2 meters distance and say, I am just here for you? Or B, say, I am willing to help you, while looking at your phone? Or C, tap his shoulder and say, everything will be fine?
Now, let's check if you got all the items correctly. The answer for number 1 is letter B. Number 2 is A. And number 3 is letter C. Did you get a perfect score? Wow, that's great. I hope that you learned a lot about verbal and nonverbal communication clearly from today's episode.
Yes, sir.
We are now on the last few seconds of our episode, and I am thankful that you always consider English Academy as your everyday habit. On behalf of the scriptwriter of this episode, Teacher Loriano Pasca Jr., I am Teacher Terence Arellano, your teacher on air, saying, always remember to communicate with honesty and politeness, because a good speaker speaks with integrity. Thank you, and till next time. Goodbye!